Welcome, everybody, to this meeting of the Concord Municipal Light Board. We have a large number of items on the agenda today, so we will jump in. We have some minutes to approve. Um, I guess we need to wait for Chris for those. So maybe what we should do in the interest of moving the meeting along, Jason, would you be willing to go to your director's report and then we'll come back to the minutes?
Absolutely. Thank you, Warren. I did want to mention that the Department of Public Utilities did extend the winter moratorium this year to start a little earlier and end a little later due to the federal government shutdown, which does impact some federal programs for low-income residents. So we are, of course, honoring that, and we'll watch that to see if there are any other changes. A lot of times they'll extend the moratorium in the spring too, depending on the winter and how cold it is. But so that was in effect early this year. In terms of training, I'm happy to report that a lot of staff have been getting training lately. We, of course, have monthly training that's usually on site. Some folks from NEPA come down and we'll do various training, often safety related. Also, the engineering team took an APPA course on engineering procurement and construction contracts. Nan and I took both introductory and advanced utility accounting courses. And I think these are really helpful in making sure that staff get continual training and professional development. I wanted to update everyone on the vehicle to grid or V2X charging grant that the schools got. And I see Chris in the waiting room, so that's great. That grant was for a free level 3 charger with 2 ports, and it is going to allow us to try to do some vehicle to grid work over at the bus depot near the W.R. Grace site. Brian was instrumental in getting some funding set aside at town meeting several years ago to pay for the work to get this going, and found this grant, and we helped the schools, with their application, and they applied and got the grant. So we had a pre-construction meeting on site. We had some concerns about the EPA's interest in managing the site because we do have to do some trenching and underground work there to get power from where the current switch and transformer area is over to where the charger will be. But the good news is that they don't see any concerns with the project, and they just would like us to have a licensed site professional participate in the excavation and follow proper procedures. So we have had those before in certain cases, and we have a contact, and I think Joe's team is working on reaching out to that individual to get her on site when we do any of that underground work. So we should be done before the frost sets in, and then can connect easily to the infrastructure there from the contractors that Mass CEC has hired. We're still working out the details of how the mechanism works for charging and discharging, and I think MWEC and others have offered the agency who is collecting the data will be managing the charging and discharging, but based on feedback they get from the schools and from us. So we'll be working with them in the near future to kind of understand more about how that will work. And then, this was meant to be a pilot to learn some things. And so we need to definitely understand what the implications would be for future development at the site. We've issued 2 rebates for commercial electric vehicle chargers in town. And these are really exciting projects. One of them is a very large project for Minuteman Arc, who plans to electrify a lot of their fleet and put in several chargers. And so a little bit later, we're going to be talking about rates and the commercial charging rate, where we have no customers today, but we expect that with these rebates, we will soon have some new customers on that rate. And so we'll be talking more about the project as it moves forward. Jan and her team let us know that we've hit 400 heat pump installations completed by coaching clients in Concord with the help of our energy management team and our fabulous heat pump coaches. So big thanks to Kim and Ethan for the work that they do, and then Laura and her entire team for that work. It's a long time and a lot of investment. I know the board has spoken in the past about how helpful those folks are, and we echo that sentiment as well. I wanted to also give a shout out to our customer service team who have been working diligently to help spin up two new utilities for us. These are the stormwater utility and then the solid waste recycling billing. It's not a utility per se, but it is a utility in our billing system. And it requires a lot of work from our team, from Jennifer's team, including Donna and the customer service representatives. And they've spent a lot of time on this project, and I believe the billing went out a couple days ago, and everything looked correct. So thank the team for that. And then also, once we get that in our rear view, then it allows us to focus more solely on time of day, which is our number one priority. And then in staffing news, I just had a couple updates. We said goodbye to our temporary employee Vika in October. That was expected as it was a transition temporary hire, but she really helped to get us through that. And then we also have two staff in customer service and metering who have announced their retirements in March of next year. And we've begun recruiting for those with the hope of a small degree of overlap, but we'll see because hiring and onboarding does always take longer than people would hope. But that was my last update there. At middle school, we're going to talk about separately, so I held off on putting anything there.
Hey, thanks very much, Jason. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Jason? Any board members?
So the heat pumps being at 400, that's cumulative, not yeah. And are we on budget with our heat pump rebates?
Yeah, I'll show you a little bit later when we talk
Oh,
about the forecast, what the energy management, what we used to call CARES
yeah.
budget is, and how that's looking.
Okay. No, it sounds great.
Good. Yeah, all does sound good. Let's go on to the broadband report, and then we'll come back to the minutes.
Sounds good. Just a couple brief updates. I know Dale was hoping to come to this meeting, but was having some scheduling and family issues. But just a few quick updates. So first, Dale will be coming to the meeting potentially in December, depending on how the agenda setting goes. But to talk about broadband rates and fees, we're going to be proposing some changes in those. We're not looking to raise any residential rates at this time, but there's a lot of new equipment that people are asking for, and we're kind of getting into the business of managed services for Wi-Fi, where previously we just directed people to buy their own equipment. But we've heard overwhelmingly that people want us to offer that service, and so we definitely need an update on our fee structure because we're going to be giving equipment for free to people to get set up, but then they may have a very large home or their equipment may be in a place where they need better coverage. So people are asking for second or third devices as well. So we just want to set the fee structure for those separate devices and kind of give a financial outlook of where we see the implications of those fees being and where we are looking forward on broadband. So that'll be coming very soon. I wanted to mention that the team has the development or the deployment of the new next generation XGS technology as their top priority. It is expected to still be close to the end of the year, sometime maybe in January, where they're ready to go live. And this will just mean the ability for faster speeds, higher saturation, lower costs for us to add new services, and then hopefully allow us to get more commercial customers and people who need speeds faster than 1 gig. So they are working on that every day, and it's a monumental task. It's really once every 10 years that something this big happens, and they're doing a great job. Our two network engineers and Dale are the primary drivers of that, but the entire team is supporting. The last thing I wanted to mention is that we did have a denial of service attack that happened a couple of weeks ago on the broadband network. Dale has written a really good after action report, and we'll be publishing that on our webpage. But there was a period of about 30 to 40 minutes where some customers were impacted with their speeds or had difficulty getting out altogether. We saw basically we have now circuits that go up to 100 gigabits per second. In the past, it was only 10. So that has definitely helped us absorb any attacks like this that just do happen. It's the nature of the business. But we still have some old equipment that have individual 10 gig circuits. So if one of those circuits gets overloaded, then it doesn't know how to prioritize that traffic. And so The team has done a good job through the after action report in identifying some steps they could take to first mitigate these from happening in the first place, but then identifying them, communicating to customers, and remedying them very quickly, so that what took 30 to 40 minutes before would take 2 to 3 minutes. But also, our ISPs individually can mitigate these attacks. It's very costly to pay for those services, but we think we found a way where we don't have to pay for the same service from every single provider, that we can just do it from one, and that will help prevent these attacks going forward. So when Dale comes back, he'll also address that in a little bit more detail. But I just wanted to mention the board that we were going to be issuing some communication and putting some information on the website in case people were wondering what had happened during that time period. That's all I've got.
Great. Any questions or comments for Jason on the broadband report?
You said the after action will be on the website.
Yes, on the broadband. We have a broadband maintenance and update page that has to do with service impacting things. And so anytime we're doing maintenance or we have any interruption in service, we always post about it there and keep it up for at least a few weeks so people can, learn what might have happened.
Okay. Just when that gets posted, can you let me know so I can
Oh,
pass it back on to those that emailed me?
absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
And Jason, in terms of offering equipment, is that something you're going to want to encourage new customers to use as the first option, or are you going to be indifferent as to whether they start with their own equipment or the equipment that CMLP offers?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. I mean, we always give customers the choice. Some people, when we show up, they already know they have their own home lab, they have their own equipment. They want us to just, give them basic service so they can connect their equipment. That's no problem. Most people, what happens when we show up is they say, we'd like internet, we'd like it to work everywhere in our house. How do we do that? And today we're saying, well, we're going to give you this basic equipment and it'll work great in your living room, but for your second, third, fourth bedrooms that are on the other end of the building, you're probably going to have an issue. You probably want to get some network extenders. And, we try to remain agnostic to brands, but we kind of tell them what we've had problems with or not problems with in the past. But then that puts it on the customer to go do something. And the competitors to Concord Broadband don't do that at all. They have fully managed Wi-Fi services. And it's also to our advantage because what happens is if people buy third-party products and have a problem, they call us and the problem might not be with our equipment and then we're troubleshooting that. So the managed Wi-Fi allows us to really understand what's happening. And so if there's an issue, our help desk provider or our staff can troubleshoot that remotely and figure out, oh, we see the problem here. You have two conflicting SSIDs. We can clear that up. Or, you know what, everything looks like it's operating normally. So we're going to have to come out and take a look. But we anticipate dozens of truck rolls a year being avoided if more customers had some of these managed Wi-Fi products. So we're definitely going to encourage them, but they're not required at all.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on broadband any board members want to ask? Well, let's go back to minutes because we have the full complement of board members here, and we have several minutes to approve. We have minutes from the last full board meeting in October. Do you want to make a motion to approve those?
Sure, yeah, I distributed these minutes. There were two sets of minutes, one for the regular meeting, one for the executive meeting. And I move that we approve those minutes and we distribute the minutes for the October 9th regular meeting, but not distribute those for the October 29th executive meeting.
Is there a second? Brian,
And
any
this
board
is,
members want to suggest that we need changes to the minutes before we vote on them?
we're talking, sorry, I
Yeah.
just want to clarify the motion. So we're doing the October 29th minutes for the regular meeting and the executive. On the agenda, it says we have executive session for August 13th as well.
Yeah, we're gonna do that separate.
Okay, all right. Good.
I have a clarifying I don't think I received the October 29th minutes. It might be because of my email, so I no longer have one of the emails. So anyway, I'm okay just abstaining from the vote today, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, so Bianca, I did forward it to you and it bounced back twice, and then I had
Yeah.
forwarded it to Jason. He gave me your email address. I had thought that Jason was going to
I
forward it.
did.
Okay.
Oh, you did? Okay, maybe I didn't. Okay,
Okay.
sorry.
Well,
I
feel
I do
free
now
to
have your new email.
abstain.
Okay, yeah, cool. Thank you.
Okay. So Bianca, do you want to go first and abstain?
Yeah, I'll just abstain.
And Chris?
I'm a yes, and apologies for the late arrival. I was having some non-internet computer
No
issues.
problem. Brian?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. And then we have a blast from the past. We have executive executive session meetings from August, and the only ones there were Chris, Brian, and I, and the three of us have seen those minutes. Um, does somebody want to make a motion to approve them?
I will do that. I'll move to approve the whatever date that was, with August 13th.
Thanks.
Uh,
And Brian, you
minutes.
want a second?
Yeah, I'll second.
And Brian?
Yes.
And Chris?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. And John and Bianca are abstentions because they were not in attendance for that. So thank you. And so let's go to the next agenda item, which is an update on the middle school solar project, something that many people have been quite interested in. Jason.
Thank you. So yeah, I wanted to give an update today and let the board and the public know kind of where we are. We have decided to cancel the invitation for bid without awarding it to a particular bidder. And I want to talk about kind of where we are, some of the lessons that we've learned, and then where we're planning on going from here. So the intent of this project was really to accomplish three things, right? We wanted to add more in-town solar, which is the goal of a lot of members of the public. We wanted to create an investment for ratepayers. The hope was that ratepayers would fund this project and ratepayers would be the beneficiaries of it. And then we wanted to add enough solar at the middle school so that the building's energy usage would be offset by that solar. Um, so any manner of procurement, scoping, design, any project would have benefits and drawbacks. And I'll talk a little bit about this particular case and what we saw as some of the challenges that we had. So I think originally as conceived was that we would be doing the construction and the building of this in concert with the school. The problem is that the two projects did not have the same stakeholders, and they also did not have the same timeline or impact if there were a delay. The school building was a $100 million project and had a lot of risks if there were delays. They were trying to thread a very tight needle of inhabiting that building during the February break and cut over from one building to the other. And if they didn't cut over at that time, the entire project would have been at risk because the next window would have been the April break. The planting of the fields for the year wouldn't have been done on time. The tear down of the old building would not have happened. So there was a lot of pressure to make sure that stayed on timeline. And when we did this procurement, we worked with our council to figure out how we were going to buy this. And the way we did it was as a utility provider, which allowed us to issue an IFB rather than go through a Chapter 149 process, which is where you typically hire an owner's project manager, and you have a design firm provide you with a bid and specs of their own. So that meant that we designed all of the specifications for the project, and it also meant that we needed a site license to be able to go procure this because otherwise we would not have any rights to hire somebody to put solar and or energy storage on the school if we didn't have that. There was a lot of time spent waiting for first consideration, then vote on that site license by the school committee, and then the execution of that site license, which is still not signed today. The original site license was conceived to be for the solar only because the feedback we got from the school committee was that they had concerns about the energy storage that would be on site. I will say that the energy storage location was chosen by the schools and their architect for basically being their preferential space on the site for that. But there were concerns nevertheless about how that would go. And from our perspective, the energy storage was required if we had so much solar on that site that they would be pushing back considerable amounts. And that would, our kind of line there was the canopy system would trigger so much solar that we would have to do something with it, and we would put a battery on site. If we only did the rooftop, we thought we might be able to not get away with the battery at this time, but we would be making the solar saturation problems that we experience worse, and definitely still had concerns about that. The original vote, and I thank Charlie Parker and others who reached out to clarify kind of how this process unfolded. But the original vote was to try to make sure that the school was fully electric, which was in line with the town's goals and their hope to adopt the zero fossil fuel bylaw and everything. And then also to try to create enough solar that would be on that site to offset the school's usage, if possible. But they also understood that this was going to be a decision the light board and ratepayers would ultimately need to make, whether that was cost effective or the best use of their funds. So the challenge here is that in this arrangement, what the schools get is they get the ability to call their school net zero. It's offset with solar. We provide 100% of our energy to all customers since 2023 as non-emitting. And by definition, that means that the school could call themselves net non-zero emitting because their emissions are all either offset by RECs or are non-emitting power. And so I think in the arrangement that we had proposed originally, the schools are taking a little bit of a risk by allowing for construction on their site and having panels on their roof. And I think that the committee would need to be motivated to see a reward for that risk or some value. And I think the larger value, right, is that the town of Concord has collective goals and the school is trying to participate in that. I would also say that there was a vote a few years before, Brian tipped me off to that, about just the willingness for the town to give the permission to certain folks to get solar built on town buildings to achieve our goals of our climate goals. So, there were some challenges, I think, from the beginning in that, but I did want to talk a little bit about what we did to make this happen and what we are hoping we can do going forward to continue to try to make something happen at that site. We had staff attending the middle school construction building meetings from the inception very early on. We also hired a designer to design all of that solar and potential energy storage and the switchboard at that site. We also hired a part-time employee who was a project manager of this site alone to oversee the project for a time period. We hired an expert to help us write the RFP for the energy storage at that site and spent considerable time vetting those companies and getting that work done. Everybody from the engineering team to the line crew to myself and Laura and several other people spent a lot of time either on site doing actual work to make this project happen, working on policies, specs, design, communication, many hours. We also paid for drainage for the canopies to be installed and tied into the stormwater system at the school. And we also installed conduits so that those canopies would be ready to go, so we wouldn't have to dig up all the infrastructure again. And that stuff is there and it's ready to go. So anytime those canopies are proposed or would like to be built, we've got that. Relatively speaking, a very small investment to be ready to do that in the future. And then the RFP process itself, which was many weeks, a lot of questions, a lot of research, and then the council that was required to, come up with the bid document and the framework of that, answer questions, help us with the process. So we're still committed to trying to get a project there. I had a good conversation with the assistant superintendent about this and talked about some plans. We're not giving up at this site. We're definitely interested in coming back and seeing what is possible and looking at some of the challenges that we experience and finding ways to address those so that when we come back with something different, if the board chooses to go down a path, that we would be much more successful in doing that. So I think our plan at this point is for staff to spend a couple of months looking at different options that we have, working with the schools to figure out what is possible, what they're open to and interested in, and then having another public discussion with the board in open session to just say, here are the paths we see. And some of them may include, outside the box thinking about how we can make something happen. But, we think we already have some ideas and we'd like to vet those with stakeholders and also council or builders or solar designers to see what's possible. We obviously have to operate within a certain legal procurement um, um, manner so that we don't deviate from anything or open ourselves up to liability. But we have some ideas of how we can proceed with an actual project, and then the board could help, with some direction. I think the other benefit of doing this is that right now our primary focus is and needs to be time of day rates. We have just 5 months before those go live, and that or 4 months, and that's an incredibly short amount of time. We have a lot of work to do, and our team is really spending a lot of time on the stormwater and other utilities. So I think that at this point, maybe Warren, if you'd like, we can open up to questions and or feedback from the board and on that plan, and then kind of go from there.
Thanks. Let me first say I really know that you and the staff have made a very good faith effort to try to bring solar to the middle school to respond to the request at town meeting. And it's too bad that we're not getting to build based on the last bids that have come in, but I know you've done a lot of useful work that will help in the future, and I thank you for that. Bianca.
Yeah, so I am curious. I have a lot of questions. Um, First is you mentioned that CMLP was in attendance on the school committee meetings from the get-go, from the start. When did the school committee initially raise concern about storage and solar?
So when I say the meetings, I'm talking about the middle school building committee, which was a separate committee that just spun up for the construction of the school. I think that entity's goal was to see the project of the construction of the school through. They were interested in sort of ancillary projects, and I would describe this as something that was in their periphery and something they wanted to watch out for from a risk perspective and a schedule perspective, but not something that the middle school building committee was charged with integrating into the project, right? And so they were not really in a position to be the ones to decide on policies about what is cited where. I think those objections came strongest from the school committee itself when they met to discuss this. I think the first time we were bumped, but the first time, or the second time rather, they just had a lot of questions and concerns. I think that the other thing is news of problems with solar or battery are cyclical in the news, and I think that may have been something that somebody read at some point and they were concerned about the risk to the building and or student safety and the proximity of the design. We did also have Aegis, who's our a loss control engineer from Aegis, who's our excess liability insurer through PERMA, came and gave a talk, and we invited all the schools, public safety, fire, building, and CMLP staff to talk about this project. And we asked very specific questions. The school didn't attend that meeting, but we did share with them kind of the results of those conversations. But they did not raise any objections at that time when we had those discussions.
So just so I'm clear, so the town voted to get the town paid for, or I should say, paid for the building.
Mhm.
And as part of that cost, the solar, I should say, the cost of the solar, it would be on CMLP or the town, or how does this?
Ratepayers. So there
Right.
was a request for borrowing authorization from the town just to be a backstop, which is required at town meeting for general obligation debt. So this would be funded for by debt issued by ratepayers and for the light plant, not to taxpayers.
Okay. And okay, so the town approved this, putting or wanted the solar on. Is that am I correct that the town voted to put the
They
solar?
voted to authorize the debt issuance. It did not require anybody to do anything, but I think it definitely does suggest that the town was supportive of the project. They probably would have raised a lot of objections at town meeting, and Brian was the one who was asking for that money. And Brian, I know there was a couple of questions. Mostly it was about financing. There were concerns about it, but nobody at that meeting that I recall brought up issues about the energy storage or about the panels themselves or about whether we should do solar. It was really more about just the financing and the payback and things like that. There were some questions, but it was overwhelmingly approved at town meeting.
Okay. All right. And then later on in the game, then the school committee, the building committee was comprised of just the portions of the school committee. Is it an entirely different committee?
Entirely different committee, people with building experience, some members of the school committee, some, the superintendent herself, representatives from the town, but a large committee and members of the select board. It was broad group of people. And I came a few times to give updates and talk about progress and answer questions that people had as they were, again, tracking this from the perspective of how does this impact our project and our budget.
Okay. And it's only after CMLP paid for a designer, paid for a procurement management, paid for a professional RFP writer, did on-site meetings, attended the committee meetings, bought and paid for the canopy and the conduits. It's only after all of those expenses that the school committee then decided that this is not something they want to do. Is that correct?
Well, so the school committee did vote to authorize the license to CMLP to
Oh,
issue an RFP for solar, but we've never received an executed agreement. So in other words, they authorized the superintendent to enter into an agreement with that license, and the license itself was proposed at the school committee meeting, but it was never executed.
and it just refused to sign the agreement for
Well, so I think that the agreement was required when we or awarded the bid. And because we didn't award the bid, you could argue that it wasn't technically required. It would have been nice to have right after the school committee voted it, and we did ask for it then. But I think that if we were ready to award the bid, we would have, used a lot more effort to try to get that agreement signed in conjunction with the school committee vote. I don't think that the superintendent said she refused to sign it. We just didn't receive it despite asking.
So let me move on to Chris.
Yeah, I have a question. So the building code, as it exists currently, requires a building like this to be solar ready, and that typically includes things like structure for the roof and conduits and similar sorts of things. Can you elaborate a little bit on what parts of that CLMP might have paid for that otherwise would have come out of the school budget?
That's a good question. I don't think that we paid for any of the prep for the building itself and the construction. We did put in more infrastructure in the electrical utility area where the battery was also planned to go, for a switchboard that would be required. So basically, right now, the school has a transformer fed by underground, lines that come into that, and it goes right into the school's panels and electrical room. If you have canopies, rooftop, and energy storage coming in, you need those things tied in a way that they can be maintained and modified in the future without disconnecting everything. And so for that, you need a switchboard, and that switchboard was expected to live inside of a manhole system that we installed and some other infrastructure that we prepared so that we wouldn't have to go dig up that area and disconnect the power again. We probably would have to disconnect it when we put the switchboard in, but that could be done, after hours or when school was not in session. So anyway, so we did some investment in the utility area to prepare, but I don't believe we paid for any of the building modifications to make the building solar ready. I think that they just followed the code, and they did. I mean, their architects assumed that there were going to be solar panels on that roof, and that was conceived of from the very beginning.
That's good. Just as a follow-up, that I understand where we are in this and understand the decision that you all have made about, and I guess we have made about not accepting any of the bids. I do find it extremely disappointing that, excuse me, surrounding towns have been able to pull this off, and even working with their local light plants have been able to put in both solar and batteries. And I think we'll figure out a way to do it sometime soon, I hope.
Thank you. Brian?
I just the process is just frustrating. When the schools wanted money to do a feasibility study, the net zero was added by the citizens at town meeting, and it was not their intent. And then the making sure that we actually did the net zero, people really wanted to see it, but there was a lot of fight over the budget. So the plan was that CMLP would take on doing that so that the bond and the schools wouldn't value engineer out like they did with the high school, the energy storage or solar production. We did what was the what do we call it? A public forum for an hour to sit down with the Solar Design Associates and with the public to go through an hour of questions. We did the hearing process and the whole process to get the budget approved to do this with ratepayer money. And at every step, the building committee was supportive of it, of the solar and storage. They incorporated it into the design. We were working with them, but once that committee kind of finished or became more of monitoring versus big decision making, the school committee has just kept asking, what do we get? And my answer to them has been, we are doing your job for you of the net zero. We are, putting ratepayer money towards this so that you don't have to, and you don't have to put up the capital. And over the next year, it's been this concern, that concern, do more, spend more money on consultants and alleviate our fears. And oh, we forgot to get you that signature, that step in the process. We'll get it to you. We lose months. I'm very, very frustrated with the way this has been handled by the school committee and administration. This is something the town wants to get accomplished. And I don't feel that they are a faithful partner in making that happen. So I just had to make that statement because this is a lot of time and money being wasted, and it doesn't have to. And we know what the town has voted to do, and in multiple occasions, and getting it over the finish line in a in a manageable fashion, something that we can say we didn't just spend money willy-nilly uh, to do it. Yeah, I'm just frustrated, and I think CMLP has to stop investing our time and effort and money until we really get a faithful partner in the schools to complete this project. We can do a lot, but we have been doing a lot, and it's not making real progress. Sorry.
Thank you, Brian. John?
Thank you for listening to my soapbox.
No, I'm glad you raised that. John?
Yeah, no, there's obviously lots of consensus here among the board, which is great to hear. And obviously Jason is going to come back with some thoughts in terms of next steps. But I feel like it's incumbent upon the board to rate. There's an issue here, which really I think goes beyond Jason's purview, is more in our court in terms of how we interact with the school committee and how the town's, objectives are, best met. I'm not an expert here, but I feel like this is something that we need a better strategy moving forward, just so that we're not in a position where we really are expending these resources and time and getting kind of outcomes that really don't deliver.
Hey, Bianca, unless do you have something quick to add? Because
I
I want
do.
to add.
Yeah, I do. I would like to, following up on John's comments, I was going to suggest that maybe we should bring the school board on create a forum, have them join us, and so that we can talk this out from board to board.
Yeah, well, I think
One
that,
one quick request, Warren.
yeah.
Jason, is it possible to make a timeline of requests and actions and kind of what we've already experienced and just get a documentation of the facts on the process, how long things took?
Yep.
Because that's going to be needed in the future for any future discussions. Thank you. Sorry, Warren.
So, no, so Jason, I think you've heard the concerns from the board here. I don't think we need to take any votes, and you're going to come back in an appropriate time with pathways to move forward. But you should feel like you have strong support from the board here, and that we're only going to want to move forward if there is evidence that there's going to be a good partner at the schools, because we don't want to waste more time and money on something that isn't going to happen. With that, thank you. Let's move on. We're going to have a rate hearing. We've approved most of the rates for this coming year, but there are a few um, specialty rates we still need to approve. So we're going to have a rate hearing. Does somebody want to make a motion to enter into a rate hearing?
It would just be to suspend the regular meeting and enter into a rate hearing.
Right, there's no special language.
Other than that, that's fine.
All right, so moved.
A second?
I will second.
Okay, John,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
Bianca,
Yes.
Brian, and I'm a yes as well.
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay, we're in the rate hearing.
All right, Laura, do you want me to share my screen and bring up the tariff sheets, or how would you like to do this? Oh, sorry. Oops. You moved around. There you are. I had to unmute you there.
Yes, you had to unmute me. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. So yes, Jason, if you wouldn't mind sharing the rate-related material that was in the packet, that would be very helpful. Do we have to start with this one?
Nope.
Can we start with one of the other ones? How about one of the, let's do the residential ETS.
Okay. This is general service. You want the last one first?
Yes.
Okay,
Please.
got it.
Okay, so we discussed this rate at length, and the board took a vote of sorts about what they wanted to see as a change in this rate at the last meeting, but you haven't yet seen a tariff sheet that reflects the changes that were requested by the board. So that's what this document is. It's an update from the prior ETS rate. It will become effective on April 1st, 2026, along with all the other new rates, including time of day. And what it shows is a total rate, if you add the 0.05384 and the 0.05255, that totals 0.10639. So basically 10.6 cents. Last year, the ETS rate was 10.43 cents. And so this 10.639 cents is a 1.02 multiplier of the 2025 rate, which is what was voted on by the board. There are no other proposed changes to this rate other than increasing it by 2%. There's still no meter fee associated with it. It still contains all the same terms and provisions that were in the prior rate.
Thank
I
you.
want to ask a quick question, Warren.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
So the current rate has the energy charge equivalent to the value of energy, and the distribution was where the discount was. You've changed it to be a 50-50. Is there a good logic for why we're doing that and we're not, because it is just a 2% increase, which is what we agreed on. But I would think that it would be the 7.903 cents for energy, same with the opt-out rate where it's still listed. And then the distribution would be 2.736 cents, which is the same total value. Is there any objection to just adjusting the numbers to
So,
represent the energy charge as it is in the opt-out?
yeah, so you may have noticed, Brian, that when this cost of service study consultant, UFS, prepared the rates, unlike the prior approach, which levelized the cost of energy and made it the same among all the different rate classes, this consultant actually prepared custom energy rates by rate class, and they based the numbers on the load shape. And so, for example, while, as you point out, the energy rate for the opt-out is 7.9 cents, it was only 6.5 cents for G1, 6.4 for G2, and 6.2 for G3. And so the breakout you see here was provided by the cost of service study consultants. They provided the energy charge of 0.05255, and I then made the distribution be the number such that the sum of the two would be 2% higher. So that was kind of the evolution of how this came about.
Yeah, I understand the description now. I have a flood of questions about the super off-peak rate. So if the actual cost of energy during those hours is dramatically lower, instead of the 7.9, it's 5.2, and then we put in the cost of distribution, the super off-peak should be, a good 4 or 5 cents lower than it is.
Well, remember, we're doing the TOD in two phases. And if you were to look at phase 2, you would see, right, which is ultimately the cost of service, a much lower super off-peak rate.
I think it gets down to like 16 cents, which, if energy is a 5% component, there's no transmission capacity, then you're talking 11 cents for distribution.
I don't have that particular breakdown at my fingertips. I will tell you that this work was performed by UFS.
All right.
So I have some confidence that, the numerical analysis was done correctly. We would have to, we'd have to dig into your questions, I think more deeply, which I'm not prepared to do at this time.
So you're uncomfortable changing this to match the format of the opt-out because of the consultant's way of doing it. You want to just stick with that, and that's fine.
Well, that's what we've done with all the other rates.
Yeah.
Like the general service rates.
And Brian, we're going to need to approve the 2027 rates before 2027. At that time, we could see if we want to adjust these numbers to match what is going to be in the time of day rates for others and the opt-out rate for others. But the total number is the same.
Correct. Yeah, I'm not looking to change the total number.
Okay.
I thought I was changing it to something that made sense with the structure, but now it's added more questions than answers. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna
I
back away
understand.
and
Okay.
just let you
Okay.
do what you
So
got.
I'm gonna hope we can vote on all of these rates at the same time. So Laura, do you want to go through?
Yes, and
Are any other
sheet-
questions on that ETS rate sheet? Okay. So
Sorry, I had a quick question. Just I'm trying to make sure I'm navigating. So I see there's a rate GS ETS and a rate R3 that mentions ETS, and we were just talking about the R3, is that right?
That's right, but we're about to go on to GSETS.
Okay, all right, I am in the right place then, thank you.
Yep, luckily for all of us, it's exactly the same, which is consistent with the way it's been in the past, where the general service ETS, of which there are only a couple customers, is the same rate that the residential ETS customers pay. So those numbers are exactly the same. It's the same 10.639 cents total. So that makes it easy.
So Pamela Dritt, you had a question or comment?
1 second. Okay.
Are we saying that the opt-out rate is lower from a customer's point of view or equivalent to the ETS rate?
No. The opt-out rate is still going to be 4% higher than the TOD rate.
And if we don't why are we phasing in the actual signal to the customers that we have the whole time of day rates was the whole purpose of the time of day rates?
So
Yeah, so
first, go on,
go
Laura.
ahead. I was just going to say, so we had talked about this, Pamela, and at the advice of the rate consultant it's two reasons. One, to not provide rate shock, to get people time, right, to get used to learn about this and to get used to it before it hits their pocketbooks. And two, to give people time to acquire enabling technologies that will allow them to shift, to get Nest thermostats, to be able to learn how to program their dishwasher. It was to give people a ramp in to adopt these technologies and get comfortable with time of day. And it's only 1 year period. It's not like a 5 or 10 year phase in, right? It's just going to be done in 2 steps. That's all.
So Pamela, let me hold other questions and go on. Laura, do you have other rate sheets you
Yes.
want
So
to show?
let's start with the one I didn't want to start with, which is the business electric vehicle rate plan. We've been working on this rate for quite a while. It hasn't been material to the light plant's operations because nobody has agreed to get on it, which tells you something. But we have now, as Jason said in his director's update, awarded 2 charging station installation rebates to businesses that require them to use this rate. So we expect to have at least 2 customers on this rate in 2026. And the main purpose of this rate is to try to provide a single rate for any business's electric vehicle charging needs. And what we have to remember is that if they don't go on this rate, their alternative is the rate they would classify under their regular business, whether that's small commercial, medium, or large. So to encourage them to get on this rate, the rate can't be a lot higher than the G1, G2, and G3 rates, because otherwise they'll just choose not to go on it. And what we're trying to do here is provide a signal, as Mr. was mentioning, to encourage people not to charge on peak. So we want them to adopt this electric vehicle charging rate. It can't be so much higher than the equivalent G1, G2, or G3 rate, because otherwise they won't do it, unless they're forced to because we gave them a rebate, which is the case with the first 2. So the cost of service study consultants came up with these numbers. They wanted to raise the demand rate to $4 per billing kW. It's currently $1.83, which was based on a study we performed on some publicly available business electric vehicle charging patterns throughout the day. I'm not in favor of increasing the demand rate to $4 because the G1 rate has no demand fee, and the G1 rate is a flat 20.2 cents. So you can see if you're a business and you can pay 20.2 cents, or you can pay between 15.9 and 18.3, but with the risk of potentially paying 48 cents or 33 cents in the standard and shoulder periods, plus the $4 per month billing kW, I'm not sure that people are going to go for this. I mean, as an example, a car charging at roughly 7 kilowatts at $4 per billing month would be charged $28 a month just in the demand fee. And if they're not charging that much, they're not saving that much in the lower super off-peak or off-peak variable rate. So I personally would rather see this demand rate be $1.83 as it currently is, which was based on some, again, analysis that we did, and adopt the volumetric rates proposed by the consultants. But I did feel that, consistent with the other rates that we've presented, that I needed to show you what the consultants had recommended. So this draft is what the consultant recommended. I am suggesting that we keep the volumetric rates as the consultant recommended, but that we change the demand rate from $4 and keep it at its current $1.83 per kW.
Okay, any questions or comments on that? Bianca and then Brian.
Yeah, I just I'm curious how, okay, so we're lowering the fee just so that we can get adoption. But then what's the, I guess the difference is that if they don't adopt this, then they would just get a flat rate and there would be no on peak, off peak.
Correct, because we haven't, our time of day right now is focused on the residential customers, and we haven't developed a time of day for commercial customers. So G1, G2, and G3 currently just pay a flat, as the residential used to be, right? A flat dollar per kW volumetric rate.
Okay. And are we going to be developing then we should be developing the time of day for businesses as well, right? That just requires another round of votes?
Well, I think that, initially one of the thoughts was, let's crawl before we walk, and let's roll out time of day for one rate class rather than trying to do all of them at once.
Okay.
There were some previously that felt that time of day for general service wasn't a good idea because businesses generally don't have as much opportunity to change their load patterns. If you're a bank that's open from 9 to 5, it's not like you have a dishwasher to run, but
Yeah.
cars are, a special use case, right? And they use a lot of energy, and you can program them generally. Although if you're a business and you want your employees to charge, they're going to be charging between, 9 and 5 or 8 and 4, whatever. So there was some thought, Bianca, I'm not sure it's shared by anyone at the light plant now, Jason, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that it wouldn't be a good idea to roll it out to commercial. I think I'll just speak for myself at this point. I think it would be a good idea to roll it out for commercial, but let's do it at a later date once we've bitten off this big mouthful that we've taken on with the residential time of day.
But so this would then just be a perk for employees. Is that what we're doing? This is just,
No, it can also be, so one of the 2 awards that were made this year was to a business that plans to allow the employees to charge and also to use the company car, which is now electric. But the other case is actually a fleet. It's the Minuteman ARC vans that go around town. And so those aren't really it's not employees' personal cars that they're charging. It's the business's fleet that's being charged.
But I think
Okay.
can I just say one thing is that I think the purpose of this is that if we get these people charging more off peak and less on peak, that will help all ratepayers because our transmission and capacity cost avoidance of doing that. And so the incentive here is really just to try to get them to follow a similar time of day structure. And so we don't know, we don't have the analysis of what we're getting versus what we're giving, but we feel like it's not like we're giving money to these people. We're just trying to incentivize the same behavior we are for time of day until we get commercial industrial time of day rate.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Okay.
Brian.
This is when we created this rate, we knew it was overly complicated, but we couldn't find a simpler way to design it. I agree with you, Laura, that the demand fee per kilowatt should be what it is in the current rate, the 183, because of exactly what you said. People would shift to the other rates. the rates, the on, off, super off, those look like the 2027 values. The 26 is our transition, and this seems to be the end goal. So that makes sense. It is a 3.5 cent increase over the current rate, which is used by no one. So I don't think they'll notice the rate change. Um, yeah, I'd love to make this rate a simpler thing to understand. But I think what you're suggesting, which is the lower demand fee and these rates, make sense.
Thank you. Any other board members have any questions? Pamela, we'll come to you in a minute, but first, before we go further, Laura, do you have any other rate sheets to share?
Yes. So,
Good.
Jason, if you would bring up the current RESRA tariff, I would appreciate it. So we don't have, it's not a draft rate that we're sharing with you. I'm sharing with you the current residential rate assistance rider rate. So you'll remember what it looks like. And I would like to just ask the board if you want to keep the rate the way it is, or if you would like to see a change. So right now, for residential customers who qualify, they receive the regular R1 rates, but then they get a 13.8 cent discount on the first 657 kilowatt hours of their bill, which is very significant. It's more than 50%. If R1 rates are roughly 21 cents, they're getting 14 cents off of that. So they're only paying 7 cents a kilowatt hour for the first 657. And so we can simply keep this rate, and it will apply either to TOU, the TOU rate, or the opt-out rate, whichever the customer chooses. And they would still get a 13.8 cent discount on the first 657 kilowatt hours. Or, we can change it. I don't know if there's an appetite for that on the board, but we wanted to bring this rate to your attention so you're aware that, it's still in effect currently unless you change it.
Thank you. Brian,
I don't see an immediate need to change it without having any real analysis. It's a 14 cent discount, which could apply to all time periods within the TOD, and just lowers the volumetric purchase. It should target a 50% subsidy for these qualified ratepayers. So as long as you feel we're still in the ballpark of that 50% subsidy, I don't see any need to change.
thank you. Any other board members have comments on this? And Laura, are there going to be additional rate sheets you want to share?
There's only one, not today. There's only one more
Okay.
that we haven't voted, and that's the private area lighting tariff. Again, doesn't apply to very many customers. I didn't manage to include it in this packet that we sent out in advance of the board meeting, so we didn't want to bring it up today because it wasn't announced that we would talk about it. So it'll just be a cleanup item, I guess, at the December meeting. But it's very similar to the rate that's charged today. The cost of service study consultants made some slight adjustments to bring it closer to cost of service. And so I don't expect it to be controversial.
Okay, thank you. Pamela Dredd. Wait,
Give me 1 second. There you go. She double unmuted. Try again. There we go.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Did the cost of service consultant consider that we had the goal to make people who heat with fossil fuels pay more for their electricity than people who use heat pumps in order to shift people off of fossil fuel in order to achieve the town and the world's energy goals, decarbonize the energy supply. In the rate setting, since we can't increase the cost of gas and oil because of all the subsidies, so we have to raise the electric rates for people who use fossil fuels as opposed to people who use heat pump, which should be a lower rate. We, as a light plant, have the ability to do that, to use our rates to actually improve the energy supply. And we need to lower it significantly for the people that use heat pumps and use the time of day rates to incentivize people to install solar and battery that CMLP can use to control the energy supply and to generate our own so that we have an overall cheaper supply for everybody, plus excess.
Pamela, thank you. The board has decided up till now that the main way we're going to incentivize heat pumps is with generous rebates for folks who install them. And we're going to see how the time of day rates play out. And we'll see if additional incentives are needed at some point. But at the moment, we're not going to do that. Your comments are interesting, but they go beyond these specific rates that sheets that we're looking to vote on now. Is there a motion to approve the rate sheets presented with the amendment that the electric vehicle rate demand charge be changed to $1.83?
I
I'll
move
make
we, go ahead.
Bianca,
Bianca, please.
I move we accept the rates as presented in these rate sheets.
oh,
With-
okay.
Mention the demand fee, though, I think.
She just
Just-
changed it.
I know, but like, if it was in the packet with the old number,
Okay.
that was just for reference.
Sure. I move we accept the rates as presented in these rate sheets, apart from the demand rate for the general service electric vehicle charging, go from $4 to $1.83 per billing period, per billing kilowatt hour, per billing kilowatt.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thanks, Chris. And Chris,
Yes.
Bianca,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. Can we have a motion to exit the rate hearing?
So moved.
And
Second.
a sec. And let's actually see a show of hands. All in favor? Okay, thank you. We're out of the rate hearing. And we're now going to see the exciting projections of the coming year.
Thank you, Warren. Let me scroll to that portion. All right, so first I just want to frame this a little bit and talk about the responsibility of the light board and the light plant and how our financial process works. I know we've got at least one new member, and this is something that we don't all do every day, so we wanted to just align everybody. Just share my screen so you guys can see. Same document, just different page on page 42 of the packet, which is, let's say, page 1 of 101 here. So every year, the light plant prepares a forecast, and every year we ask the board to sort of endorse that forecast with a vote. This year, our plan is to talk about this very broadly, about what changes you'll see, about some of the numbers that are in here. We plan to ask the board to vote on this in about a month at the December meeting. In that time, we expect that we will give you another draft of this to, number one, incorporate any feedback that we get today. And number two, numbers are still being solidified. We're still getting data from E&E. We're still going through this and making sure that everything is 100% correct. So for the expected end of year 25 data and for the 26 forecasted data, there may be some slight changes as we uncover different numbers. And I will say that, for example, our financial system is typically closed about 90 days after the month end. So when we are running reports to prepare this right now, we're actually looking at financial data that's about 3 months old. But we do obviously have a lot of other ways that we can figure out what's happened in that time period, what's been booked, and also just by talking to staff about projects that were planned and are they going to hit before the end of the year. There's obviously some degree of uncertainty with November, December, but what we're looking for is kind of support that the direction that we're moving in and what we're planning on doing is in line with the board's priorities and expectations. So we're going to touch on things that are of higher degree of certainty, because what we don't want to do is drill into numbers and the board says, well, that looks great or that looks terrible. And then a week later, we send you another draft and the reverse is true. So we will definitely let you know where we have high and low degrees of confidence on certain things. The executive summary at the beginning kind of just gives you a very high level overview. There's actually another page that doesn't do it in word form, so we're going to jump into that.
Jason,
Sure.
one comment in terms of the executive summary, just looking at the net income figures on the prior page. If you can move it back to the prior page if possible. Sorry, yeah.
That's okay.
There, for net income, looking at the difference between 25 and 26 didn't really tie to the 25 versus 26 number there, at least based on my understanding.
Okay. Thank you. That's helpful feedback. I mean, so the executive summary, this whole document comes from an Excel document. All of the tables are calculated and tied to each other. This is a picture of a Word document that has to be changed every time the numbers change. So, we have to go through and literally edit a Word document, take a picture of it, and put it in the Excel document for this to be there. So I did change this about 12 times yesterday. So I will triple check before we, ask you guys to vote on anything, that all the numbers here tie to all of the numbers that are in the tables. And that's why I kind of glazed over the text because, yeah, and those numbers appear down here a little bit later. And this is the chart of the combined net income or loss. And just so that you can see, it's projected, the net income is projected to rise a little bit. Well, let's get to the tables because it's a lot clearer to see there. So total combined, which is both telecom and electric, which you can see are broken down a little bit further, is projected to be about $2 million, which is a little bit higher than 25. The numbers that I think we have less degree of confidence for are the purchase power numbers for 25, because there's been a lot of back and forth between Laura, myself, E&E, and we're looking into the rec purchases, and we're looking into what transactions weren't booked in 24 that ended up being booked in 25, and what the estimate is for the end of the year. We buy recs only for power that we don't already have recs for, and we rely on E&E to give us those calculations, and those need to be trued up. And they are also done in arrears because, recs are minted in the quarter after the period. And so it's a challenge to get these numbers right. This to me is probably a very conservative estimate, and it will probably edge much higher once we get some of those numbers figured out. But for the 26 forecast, I think we're going to talk about these segments separately when we talk about power supply, we talk about O&M, personnel, and debt. And so I would just say that this is where we're trending, both with positive net incomes, and you can see telecom at about 400,000 and electric at about 1.5 million, 1.6 million. This is just the telecom portion of that shows you the breakdown. Telecom has steadily been increasing. You can see year over year as subscribers grow. This represents a slight decrease. I think some of that is the large investments that we've made in depreciation spending to do the XGS PON, which is, again, a once in a decade thing. So we expect that those will continue to edge up as the subscriber base is built. And this PLOF has been gone for 3 years now. That was a payment for media services. In terms of personnel summary, let me get down to the actual numbers. We have been carrying a position in sort of the administration bucket for an FTE for a few years now. Our leadership team is having a meeting tomorrow where we're going to talk a little about strategy and about the future. And we do hope that we can fill that position very soon and come talk about headcount. The line crew, you'll see we actually hired 2 line crew members this year. We did have one third-class line crew member who left, and the 2 that we hired are both apprentices at different levels. So you'll see the number there down 1. Everything else is about the same. The reason that that finance headcount did go up to 4.8 was, as I mentioned, our temp that we hired in the between times between our financial managers. And then all the others are showing flat. You do see some increases in these, some going up, some going down, many of them, including the line crew, going up. We do have bargaining units now, and we have not settled on a contract, but we've tried to predict, where we think those numbers will land. And this represents those increases. A little bit more detail down here. You'll see that there's breakdowns by gross pay, overtime, and then all of the other benefits that we do track. The town does journal entries and corrections for these based on actual costs. So these numbers are based on trends and what happened the previous year. Obviously, people take insurance and leave insurance all the time. Some new employees take it, other new employees don't. So it's kind of hard to predict some of those costs. We do know that health insurance costs are rising. The town is now part of Maya, and it seems like people are pretty happy with that. But as probably everybody here is experiencing, those costs do go up year over year. You see overtime costs going up. I think that some of this, a large part of this is this in this line crew bucket, expected to be a result of just salary increases, which impact standby and overtime pay.
Wait, Jason, before you go further, that seems like a larger increase in line fee overtime than just salary increases.
Yeah, and so I think typically overtime is heavily dependent on weather events and actual emergencies. And so we typically forecast in what we think of a typical year, and then sometimes we have a somewhat lighter year. So I think that part of it is just, that forecast last year was also higher. And I remember John pointing it out that why is there such a large increase in that? And I think that, we have our typical weather season that we plan for with this many events. We do call in nearly the entire line crew when we have a big event. And then also just the salary cost. People's overtime is based on their base salary. So if their base salary is going up because of a bargaining agreement, then their overtime costs will go up as well. But I will definitely look at those just to make sure that there's nothing awry. But this pulls from an actual personnel file that anticipates a certain percentage increase over the previous year of actual data. So I'll double check that, but my sense is that it's probably correct for a forecast, but hopefully it's a little bit lower than that.
Thank you.
And please just jump in if anybody has any questions at any time. This is just the last page of the personnel benefits. There's these note pages for back when we used to print the forecasts. Members had a big old docket that they carried around with them. As I mentioned, the 2025 estimates you see here are very slight net income, and that's some of the numbers that we have a little bit of a question about in terms of the purchase power. And I'm gonna get to that in a second. I'm gonna skip some of the graphs because I think the numbers are a lot clearer to see. So here we're looking at revenue. You can see that, again, we're not in the business of making money. We're regulated to no more than an 8% return by the DPU. Any extra money that we take in from power supply sales or from energy sales does get tracked, and those go into the rate refund account, which you can see at line 33 toward the bottom. When that number is negative, that means we owe money back to, or sorry, we are owed money, Laura.
No, the other way around.
We owe money back to ratepayers when the number gets very positive, like this 1.7 million down here. We owed money back to ratepayers, and is that when we would have implemented a PCA to return some of those funds?
So just to be clear, when it's negative, we owe the money back to the ratepayers. When it's positive, they owe it to us, which is why I think that 1.1 million negative in 2025 is suspect.
Yeah. Okay, because we started returning some back. after 24?
We owed customers at the end of 2024. We had a year, which we're going to talk about in a minute, in 2025, where power costs were higher than what was in the budget. And so I would think that actually that number might be positive for this year instead of a big negative. I would think we spent more on power supply than we took in, and so the customers would owe us back, which would impact, it would raise the very small net income of 0.25 up.
Thank you. I don't know why it turns blue like that. Okay, so expenses here, you'll see a very large jump in that purchase power cost, which we believe needs some refining, especially in that first line number 59 here. Everything else is somewhat in line with what we've seen before. I'll highlight that O&M costs were looking lower, but that also depends on how we finish the year and what data we get from the last 3 months, and if there's anything big that happens. But I will say that our tree trimming, which we had forecasted at something like $760,000, came in far lower than that this year, and so that saved a nice chunk of money. So let's get to the purchase power, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. The DPU has a different formula for rate of return. Different things are calculated, so you'll see two different lines. We'll see an effective rate of return, and then you'll see the DPU formula, and that's what's mandated at no more than 8%. And so sometimes they're very closely in alignment, like in 2024. Other times, like in 22, they deviate more, just depending on what's excluded from that calculation. This is just more specifically about that rate of return, and you can see kind of annualized what things are looking like for the DPU formula, all well within the bounds of acceptable limits. Here's expected revenue.
So wait, Jason, if you could go back on that page. Yes, this is all within the bounds of acceptable limits, but for planning purposes, is there a percentage net profit margin that we should be aiming for?
Brian's saying 2%. I've heard the 2 to 3% is kind of what we've been aiming for, and it looks like we're pretty close to that.
I would like to just interject that 2.5 to 3% was what it was historically when interest rates were low. In my opinion, it should target the cost of capital. So if interest rates are closer to 4%, then I believe the rate of return should be closer to 4%.
And last year, the board did consider rates under two different scenarios. One where they were targeting a 3% rate of return, and one was a 3.5%. Was that, Laura? Do you remember?
I thought it was 3.5 and 4, but maybe you're right. I think they ultimately decided on 3.5.
But we settled there. So that was the projected. But again, once we adjust the power supply numbers, we expect that to be closer to the 3 number. John has a question.
Yeah, just one comment. I just feel like we need to be careful with these numbers, because if the net profit is based on gross plant as opposed to net plant, it really is not a true indication in terms of the profitability, right? We should be looking at kind of the net plant, which reflects kind of the plant that's in service. And that would provide a better comparison, which, as Laura indicated, because I think we do want to make sure that our return is covering our cost of capital. But I think the other thing to consider is, right, my understanding is there's very little debt. So it's not like there's an issue, and I think we saw this with the analysis that the cost of service consultant prepared, was that the debt service coverage ratios are very satisfactory.
Yeah, and we do have something like $20 million of debt authorization on the books right now, and we do have, we're hoping that we can start doing some of those projects like at the middle school and the energy storage. So that might change, but you're right. Today, very low debt levels.
Bianca.
Yeah, I was going to echo the same concern, is that I think that using the cost of capital as a target is is normally a good idea, but because we don't, and because we just generally don't need it, or haven't needed it, right? I looked, the last time I looked at historical debt levels, it has been low and it has been historically low. So I would say that we can adjust that if and when we do take on a more meaningful amount of debt, but hopefully we won't ever need to, in which case we're just over collecting.
Warren, did you want to take a comment from
Laura,
Yeah, thank you. I did want to point out that the net income has to service both the debt, as you both pointed out, is pretty non-existent. So that's not a really material factor right now. But it also has to cover the difference in inflation between the net book value and the cost of replacement. So, if we installed a 1 megawatt transformer and it's on the books at $80,000 and it really costs $300,000 to replace it, that $220,000 has to come out of net income to be able to replace it. So I just want to make that point that there was one consideration beyond the debt that the net income has to cover.
Are those projections for replacement costs not already in the budget?
So we have a depreciation account and we track that, but we don't track the highly variable cost differential between something in service versus I mean, because during the pandemic, for example, people were buying things from other countries, rebuilding things. People were paying astronomical prices. Some of those prices have come down. We would have to, do analysis constantly to figure out what the today's price is for these things and or for certain commodities that fluctuate wildly. We certainly plan on and expect a certain level of inflation, but when we buy a device, we track its depreciation over the life of it. And I think that historically, inflation has been, kind of predictable in the last 10 to 20 years, but in the last few years, it's been pretty crazy. So I think that Laura's also just mentioning that some of those costs are unaccounted for. I'm going to get into the revenue expectations over here. So power supply, electricity sales you see here are expected to be somewhat flat if the 25 number holds up as we expect. The rate refund is where you see the big difference. And I think, Laura, you were mentioning that you want to double check some of these numbers to figure out if that's true and accurate. And if you think.
Actually, the rate refund right there, Jason, does show positive in 2025.
Right.
2.1 million, which is the direction I would expect it to be. I think the other one looked like a negative.
There's down here. Here we go. There's where the detail is.
But up at the summary line, it seemed like that was a negative number for 2025, way back at the beginning when we were looking.
Right. Right
So
here.
that's what doesn't look right to me.
Okay. We will look into that. Let me get back.
At what point do you feel staff feels these numbers are reflective of the situation so that the board can comb through them? Because this
Right.
happens every year. It's a lot of these are estimates, numbers are coming in, but there needs to be a point at which we make the effort to go through this document and come up with questions. And I just want to make sure that we're not doing it prematurely and make a lot of effort, come up with questions that staff
Right.
already knows they need to correct.
And I think that what we're hoping for is more feedback on the things like personnel capital, and having discussions about trends of purchase power and transmission costs so the board is aware. And then we'll try to get you a clean copy as soon as possible so that you have time to look at it, respond with any comments or questions well ahead of, like the day before the next meeting. We can shoot for a week before at least the next meeting so the board members have a chance to look it over and offer any feedback or review it at that next meeting.
And the board will get an email with the document that's unredacted so that we can read it, and the public one will be redacted as usual.
Yep. Yeah, and the things that we redact are just power supply contracts that we are legally obligated to keep confidential in the agreement, and that's the only redactions that we apply for the public. Laura, did you want to highlight anything on power supply or revenue?
Yes, power supply.
Let me go back up to electricity sales, or do you want me to go to the purchase power?
Purchase power.
I don't know how much of this is unredacted though.
You have the redacted copy. I just saw it at the bottom.
Yeah, it's in the packet. This is the one that's in the packet.
Right.
And obviously, I'm not going to show the unredacted one. Do you have any either slides, or do you just want to talk through some of the things that we expect?
Well, that's unfortunately, that one is not the most updated. It doesn't have the 26 forecast in it.
Do you have that one, or do you want to just talk about it?
Yeah, this is
Yes, I
the-
think I have that one. Let me just think about where it is. Well, let's skip over that for now and let's go, because I want to talk about 2025. We've got this net income of $250,000 positive, which we believe is low. And let me tell you what is low about it. So purchase power for 2025 is showing about $3 million higher. You're still on sales. Jason, you got to go down.
Is it down? I thought it was up, but maybe you're right. I thought this
I
was
think
Down.
I think it's in the redacted.
because it's in here, Laura, but there's also the expenses up here that show right here. That's sales. Hold on.
Okay, so you can stop there, yeah. So you can see 2025, 25.8 million expected purchase power cost versus 22.3 for 2024. It's my belief of that 3 million differential, about half is real, and the other half could potentially not materialize and result in lower purchase power costs and a higher net income. So let me explain why. So the $3 million, in general, power supply expenses were higher in 2025 than we had originally anticipated. So we had expected prices to range from roughly $35 in May to $120 in January. In reality, this year, May averaged $80 and January was $190. So prices were higher than expected, and we bought a lot more. We had a pretty cold January, February, and we had a very hot June and July. So not only were the prices higher, but we had to buy more, which is reflected. I don't know if it's in one of these slides. You'll see the ISO purchases ended up being much higher than expected because all that extra load that we had was pretty much bought in the spot market. So the January, February cold snap resulted in power expenses about $750,000 higher, and the June, July was another $750,000. So there's $1.5 million. The other $1.5 million is probably coming in large part from transmission. Right now, we still have the budgeted transmission figure that E&E provided us with for 2025 in there as our estimate. I mean, transmission is the last bill to come in. It's even further behind all the other bills. So we have even less visibility of it. But when I count up all the invoices we've already paid for transmission, it is quite a bit less than what is in the 2025 budget. So I believe in the end, the transmission expense is not going to be as high as it is. I think it could be up to $1 million to $1.5 million lower between transmission and ancillary services. So that's real money we could get back. So instead of the net income being 250,000 positive, it could look something more like $1.5 million positive. But it's not going to be 3 million because we spent more on purchase power. But you do see, at least in one of these lines, that money coming back onto the income statement in the $2 million provision for rate refund, showing money coming back from customers to CMLP to cover those extra purchase power expenses. So that's a little bit of color on why the 2025 number is so low. In 2026, we are estimating purchase power of 24.3 million. That also has a pretty conservative transmission expense. E&E likes to forecast conservatively for transmission. As you probably remember, transmission actual bill is based on what our peak is for the month, which we obviously don't know in advance. Even though we know the rate per kilowatt that we're going to pay, we don't know how many dollars we're going to pay because we don't know how many kilowatts we're going to use. And so E&E tends to forecast that somewhat high to make sure there's enough money in the budget, to pay for transmission. And hopefully we find that number to be a bit lower. This year, we are expecting more renewable energy certificates to come associated with production. We have a couple new hydro contracts coming online, and we have provisionally put in 6 months of the new Mason Bay wind contract, which has been delayed for a couple of years due to financing issues. There is some hope that that would come online later this year, certainly not before July. And so there is about half a year's worth of production from that. So our cost to meet the 100% renewable energy target by purchasing incremental non-associated RECs it's not gonna cost us as much. We're not gonna have to spend as much money on RECs because we're getting more of it coming with associated production. So REC costs are down, capacity costs are down, which we'll show you in a slide, perhaps when you get the next packet. But transmission costs are up. And power supply costs are up from where they were certainly in 2024. They're not going to be, I don't think, as high as 2025, but they're higher than 2024. So some elements of the purchase power expense going up, some going down. Ultimately, we hope the cost to be slightly less than this year and maybe quite a bit less if transmission comes in lower.
Thank you. Brian.
The price for unbundled RECs, is it still at the alternative compliance payment rate?
Close to it, $38 to $39.
Okay, so we're getting good value out of those bundled RECs.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
John, you had your hand up. Did you get your question answered or?
Yeah, Laura answered it. I mean, I was going to make the point or raise the question of, I assume that the lower transmission costs was basically just demand being lower during the monthly peak, and Laura made that point. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. So Jason, what else do you have to present?
For under the O&M, there's a description of the accounts so people can understand what they are. That doesn't change too much year to year, but we add a little bit of color. I will say that with being down staff, it definitely does impact our ability to do projects. We hope with a full line crew, and as they get trained more and more, that we can complete more of those projects, and you can kind of see how the breakdowns are and where we expect to be doing work. It's pretty on par with our 2024 actuals of what we're forecasting, and I'll go down into the breakdown here and talk a little bit about some of those costs. We are assessed a payment from Eversource for maintenance of their station that ties into ours. Other costs you see here are for maintaining the distribution system, which is quite expensive. You can also see tree trimming and some of the other maintenance that we do. We had a year you see there in 24 where the number was quite low. I think we did maybe a third or a quarter of the town in 23. 25, we did half the town, and we're hoping to do 26, the other half, so that we can catch up, and then we'll resume our 3 to 4 year plan. Some areas it was badly needed, and it's a really good investment to reduce unplanned outages and create just safer situations for line workers who have to work in that space. Maintenance of underground lines you see pretty similar. We do track separately as capital, new installations and new undergrounding. Anything we create new as capital is not counted in here. These are expenses. Coming down here to customer accounts, this is like basically the reading of and maintenance of all that stuff that is needed to track and bill customers. Some of the smart grid stuff, or some of the smart grid expenses are not included in here because we're not tracking a separate smart grid, which we used to have carved out just for a small number of customers. Now everything is counted in the AMI bucket. And on here is also the CARES expenses, which are the energy and sustainability initiatives and rebates that we see. And I think I have a separate slide for that. Let me get to that here first, and I'll come back to the other admin
Sorry.
and general costs. Oh,
Jason, I saw on the previous page lighting rebates and ETS rebates. I thought those are both done.
Yes, that's a good question. I don't know why there's an ETS rebate in here. So I will look at that. Lighting, well, we do lighting rebates, right, Laura? We do for commercial customers. Oh, sorry.
Oh, but yeah, so there's a commercial program for lighting, but we stopped doing the LED bulb rebate
Right,
because
correct.
their LEDs have become the default now.
Exactly, ubiquitous and affordable. I will look into that. Laura, do you want to walk through the energy management forecast here?
Yeah, sure. So, we are spending a lot less on our energy management initiatives in 2025 than we budgeted for. The main driver is a much lower payout for air source heat pump rebates. We anticipated paying out as much as $600,000 in rebates, and year to date, we've only paid out about 225,000. We're anticipating by the end of the year paying out perhaps 350,000. So it's almost $250,000 or more than $250,000 lower. We are seeing a slowdown at least in our, these are only counting heat pumps where we pay the rebate. There are customers who do install heat pumps that don't take advantage of our rebates. So this isn't necessarily reflective of the entire townwide adoption of heat pumps, but I do think it's probably indicative. So that's a big decrease.
The incentive the customer receives is still the same, though. It's just the number
Correct.
of people participating is lower.
Correct. Yes. No, the rebate levels haven't changed at all. It's just the number of people utilizing them that has changed. EV miles is a bit lower. We have the adoption of the Connected Homes program, which is a replacement for the EV miles program. There are still customers who are on EV miles right now because they have cars that are not accepted under the Connected Homes program. So we had a lot of people falling off payment from EV miles because they went into Connected Homes.
So where does Connected Home show up on here?
Sorry, I froze for a second.
That's a good question, Jason.
Yeah, let me look at the file. Keep talking. I'll
Okay,
look.
I know it was in the budget. I don't know if it's on this slide. So
Sorry, I missed Jason's question. My Zoom froze.
It
So
was
Brian,
one.
I was just asking where Connected Home shows up on this page, and Jason said he had to look it up.
Great. Yeah.
So keep going, Laura.
Okay,
And
so ultimately, we expect to spend about let's see, 450,000 less than was budgeted for 2025. And again, the primary driver is lower heat pumps, with the other categories just incrementally adding to that deficit. So for example, variable refrigerant flow air source heat pumps for the commercial sector, we didn't know if we would get any. We put 50,000 in the budget. We didn't get any. So there's 50,000. There was 40,000 in the budget for high efficiency lighting program rebates. Not many of those have come in. So that's another 30,000. So these just add up. And so ultimately it's 450,000 less than what was in the budget.
And do you think there'll be an end of the year rush as the Fed is ending a lot of its incentive programs, that people will be finishing projects before that deadline and then requesting rebates, or do you have no whispers of that?
So we certainly do see that in the solar rebates, and we've accounted for that in our projection. So for example, on solar rebates, you can see we've budgeted 92,000. Actual as of 8/22 is only $18,000. But look at the 2025 projection is still 70,000. And that's because we're getting a lot of them crammed in before the end of the year. So that is factored in. Some of the other ones, like level twos, that we've also, to the extent we know about them, those are projected in, so that the level two is actually up from 15,000 budgeted to 19,000 projection for the end of the year. So some of those, yes, I think we are seeing, a packing of them in Q4.
What I see is $21,250 for connected homes is in the energy management expenditure forecast that ties into the chart above. But this here is a separate chart that pulls from some things, and I think there just isn't a line for it. But it will
Yeah.
be a separate line right above the word commercial, kind of in the middle below the Drive EV rebate, and it is expected to be about $21,000. So if you look at the EV miles forecasted last year was 46,000, so it will be coming in lower than the total of the EV miles and the connected homes customers. But I'll make sure that it appears on here in the next draft.
Yeah, I knew it was in the forecast. I just didn't see it on this sheet.
And promotion of these programs is evolving. It's, I know we did a lot of tabling, we've done a lot of bill inserts. Is there any way to up awareness of our heat pump programs and try to get people to utilize this more? I just, for almost $500,000 in a, 1.2 budget still sitting around unused. It's showing, maybe it's the national picture of people assuming that everything went away is why we're seeing lower uptake based on the news cycle.
I don't think we know exactly why we're seeing the lower adoption of heat pumps at this time. I don't think we're unique. I think it is, environment-wide phenomenon. What I will say, Brian, is we're very excited in 2026. CMLP is going to be hosting the Green Homes Tours this year. Last year, the CAC was in charge of that, and I think we at the Light Plant see some opportunities to further broaden, the audience we reach out to, and to make this a more well-attended event. And so we're going to be taking that on in 2026. It's going to be a big project for energy management, and I think it's going to be, one of the highlights of the year. So very excited about that. But, I will also say that in terms of from a utility-wide perspective, we are heavily focused on the time of day education over the next 3 to 4 months, and that's really going to kind of take precedence. So that company we hired to prepare material, they're working on web pages and, videos and emails and all that kind of stuff for customers.
Great. Well, if you want to add me to the list of tour homes, let me know.
Okay.
Hey, Jason, I want to end at our 9:30 time. I want to leave time for liaison and public comments. So you have 6 minutes left.
No problem. I just want to talk about some plant costs and also capital. We are hoping that we can do one of the big projects, in calendar 26, whether it's energy storage or solar. And so you'll see some of the gross plant increases when we get to solar and energy storage that are projected to be much higher. Sorry, I breezed by one of them here. So you'll see some distribution equipment, which has to do with SCADA system, and you'll see solar generation, which has to do with middle school, line transformers, which we just purchase periodically anyway, some of them for some of these big projects. Let's see, the street lighting. We do have several that we need to replace, and they're very expensive. We do want to talk a little bit about in the future about a project for the business districts, because it often comes up where we really need to dig up the sidewalks and replace the aging direct buried infrastructure there that would allow for conduits to be added for data, which will help with things like Wi-Fi, cell service, getting business district customers, as well as getting more reliable electricity distribution mechanisms, because right now they're very prone to failure because they were direct buried cables and very old infrastructure. but we don't have anything forecasted for this coming year, but it is something that we need to talk about the financing of. There's a lot of structural improvements we plan to do for the plant itself in terms of HVAC, roof, parking lot, and various substations and the office buildings. Transportation equipment is in there under the capital plan. And let me zoom to that because I guess if we just have a few minutes, that's what I'd like to cover. Gross plant, capital, and I should also just keep a minute for telecom. So here you see some of the debt that the levels that we were talking about, and you see there the middle school and then a potentially large battery if they come online. That middle school debt did not come online, so we'll be able to adjust that number down. This pulls from a separate spreadsheet that doesn't tie into the other thing, and capital is handled differently than expenses, so I don't think this will change our net income. But when we come down here, let's see, debt service. So yeah, so we need to make a decision on the mechanism of financing. The first battery that we were looking at was going to be financed in a different way than us purchasing it, but we continue to explore other locations like the W.R. Grace site and potentially at a substation, including other battery technologies that are coming online. We know that another MLP has signed on to purchase a 100-hour iron flow battery. They do take up considerable space in terms of acreage, but we're looking at other chemistries and different options for longer term. Okay, capital plan. So yeah, I would encourage people to look at this. It's very front loaded, and I think we have a lot more visibility into what needs to happen in the near future. And some of these projects like SCADA, which are already in motion and that will complete, and then some of the solar generation. But if that gets moved to a different method of procurement or to a different year, then that obviously would spread out a little bit further in the future. You can see the big numbers as the solar, the SCADA systems, energy storage at the middle school, and then transformers and conductors and all the other things that we need to do to keep the distribution system running. The general plant, that was the sidewalks, pavement, roof, things like that. Let's run
What
down
was the transportation equipment in this year?
transportation in the current 25.
Yeah,
1.12 million.
Yeah, hold on one second. Is that down? Where's it up here?
oh, it's in 2026. You're showing
Oh, over here. Got it. The 1.12.
line
Line
53.
53.
Yep, I'm pulling up the capital plan, and that is
Yeah, also garage equipment is 500,000. That's
30.
I mean, with plant, just the chart that shows net change in plant value, the 2026 forecast is over 13 million in additional
Right.
change, and no other year is anywhere close.
So I have Digger Derrick, which is a very large vehicle. We also have the excavator and actual car vehicles. We've been buying some EVs, replacing the engineering Jeeps. Some of those might hit this year, some of them might hit next year. I'm looking to see what the other. I see 1.12. I see Digger Derrick. Joe, can you remember if there was another big vehicle?
Well, that's enough for the moment, but thank you.
So telecom, again, I kind of highlighted this at the very beginning, but just the general tick upward and then the capital costs that we incurred this year. For vehicles and other capital costs, we feel really good about telecom not needing anything for a few years. And when you look at the telecom capital forecast down here, Um, we capitalize new installations because those are new assets that come on, but you'll see that there's not any new large expenditures until we hit about 2028 for a new van and then some communication equipment. And then in terms of staffing, no new staff are planned for telecom. We're fully staffed for the first time in a long time with 2 network engineers, the broadband manager, and 3 telecom technicians. So just to wrap up, what I will do is send the unredacted clean copy to the board as soon as we possibly can to allow time for questions and feedback, and then well ahead of the next meeting. And then we'll make sure we get it posted so the public can review it in enough time as well. And then we'll obviously entertain any questions or recommendations before it's voted.
Thank you. Any questions or comments now from the board? Any liaison or public comments, not necessarily just on the forecast, but on anything? Pamela Dritt.
Oh, sorry, 1 second. Making notes.
Yeah, I just want to point out that if we don't, on the time of day rates rolling out slowly in order to avoid rate shock, if we don't give the public access to the full extent that we're aiming for of the differential rates, what their usage would imply for their costs, then we aren't mitigating it by rolling it out slowly. All we're doing is postponing it. So we need to have customers have access to what it's going to be when it's fully implemented in order for them to have the time to make the adjustments. And we also need to, that would reduce the cost, not just for them, but for all of us, which is, yay, what we want. And we also need to inform them of what they could do to lower the costs, not just for them, but for all of us. Yay, that's what we want. And we need to also include in that what benefits they would get from installing solar and battery storage systems and how that would lower their costs significantly along with the cost for all of us. Yay, that's what we want.
Hey, Pamela, those are very good points, and we will, after the first of the year, be reviewing the education and outreach strategy for time of day rates. And I encourage Jason, Laura, and others to take seriously those comments from Pamela about the fact that we need to give people indication of what the full time of day rate's going to be when it's fully rolled out so that they can really plan appropriately.
And also, you can tell people what it would be. Say they go on the website or in their bill,
Yes.
what it would be without actually charging them that. That way, we really do get a benefit from the slow rollout because people learn about it as it applies to them.
Yeah, that is a very good point. So thank you for bringing that up, Pamela. And
One more question.
we're going to need to end for the day because I know some people have hard stops.
Just one
Can I
real quick
see a
question.
motion? Can I see a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Brian. Brian,
Yes.
Bianca,
Yes.
Chris,
Thumbs up.
he's a John.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody, for participating in a long meeting. We've covered a lot of ground, so thank you very much, and we'll see you again next month. Bye now.